Victoria never understood boundaries. She kept entangling herself with her ex, and every time I expressed my anger, she would laugh it off, calling me petty. She was confident I wouldn't dare to break up with her. Later, when I finally showed my determination to end things completely, she broke down, crying and clinging to my legs. That day, when I told Victoria I wouldn't care anymore about her relationship with Ethan, she paused, then laughed even more heartily. "Oh, Sincere, you've not only become more understanding, but also developed a sense of humor. That's the way it should be. Don't be so bitter like before, acting as if the world owes you something. It makes me uncomfortable when you're unhappy. Men should be generous, not petty or paranoid about being cheated on. Ethan is fragile and can't handle stress. Even though we broke up long ago, seeing us being affectionate would devastate him. Poor thing, such a brilliant person. How did he end up with depression? If Ethan does something stupid, not only would I be heartbroken, but you'd feel guilty for life too. I wouldn't feel guilty at all. If Ethan died, I'd celebrate with fireworks. Not because I'm cold-hearted, but because he's clearly faking it. However, whenever I mentioned Ethan's manipulation before, Victoria would fly into a hysterical rage, calling me heartless and jealous, a cold-blooded creature. She'd insist she hadn't done anything wrong and tell me to be more positive, less dark-minded. Rather than being jealous, I should focus on loving her more. I was tired of arguing. "Victoria, let's break up." Before I could finish, her phone rang. Just hearing that ringtone, "First Love," I knew who it was. Like a bad penny, Ethan always turned up whenever Victoria and I had a date. "Vicky, I'm in so much pain. I don't want to live anymore. Everything feels gray. My world is so cold. Does nobody like me? And you're not here with me. Don't be sad, Ethan. I'm coming right now." While Ethan was putting on his act, Victoria panicked as if someone had died. She rushed to her car, drove the wrong way onto the main road, ran 3 red lights, and pushed her Mercedes to over 90 miles per hour in a 40 zone. Other drivers slammed on their brakes in fear, rolling down their windows to shout, "Got a death wish? Want to die? Don't take others with you." Victoria ignored them all and sped away. I was grateful she forgot to ask me to get in the car, sparing me from her reckless driving. Whenever anything involved Ethan, she would lose all sense of reason, throwing everything and everyone, including me, aside. I used to be jealous, angry, and resentful. I was her actual boyfriend. So why was I being treated like a backup? I tried to compete for her attention, even stooping so low as to fake illness. I put a thermometer in hot water to pretend I had a fever, begging Victoria not to leave. But she just said, "Come on, Sincere, enough. No living person can have a temperature of 131 degrees Fahrenheit. You'd be dead at 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Please stop acting. Ethan hasn't eaten for 2 weeks. I must take care of him." See? She was smart enough to know a fever was impossible. I was lying. But she was foolish enough to believe someone could survive without food for 2 weeks. Ethan was obviously lying too, but Victoria always believed him, becoming completely naive in front of her ex. Perhaps women only act foolish in front of the men they truly love. The root of all my pain stemmed from the fact that she didn't love me that much. After being a love-struck puppy for 2 years, I was exhausted. Waiting for the clouds to clear didn't guarantee sunshine. It might reveal an even darker void. So when I took Victoria to the concert that day, it wasn't to celebrate our 2-year anniversary. I planned to formally break up with her. Unfortunately, she didn't even give me the chance to mention breaking up. After midnight, Victoria still hadn't returned, and I fell asleep. Things weren't always like this. Before, whenever she stayed at Ethan's place, I would be tormented, like a restless wolf in a zoo, red-eyed and sleepless. I feared they might end up in bed together. I never dared to call and ask her to come home because it would make her angry. I could only pace outside Ethan's apartment building at midnight, counting how many rooms had lights on like an idiot. 2 lit rooms would make me ecstatic, 1 would depress me, and complete darkness would devastate me. I'd sneak up to his door, pressing my ear against it to listen for suspicious sounds, nearly getting arrested by security who mistook me for a thief. When Victoria returned, what I really wanted to ask was how they had slept, but I didn't dare. I could only pretend to be understanding, voluntarily washing her clothes, locking myself in the bathroom to smell them like a dog, checking for another man's scent or suspicious stains. I ended up developing allergies despite never having them before. I used to be so pathetic. Calling me a loyal dog was an insult to man's best friend. But thankfully I've awakened now. Loving someone who doesn't care about you is slow suicide. So now I sleep soundly. Whatever happens, happens. Let it be. At 1 a.m. I got a text from Victoria. She seemed to finally remember she'd left me at the concert venue. Sorry, I was in such a hurry I forgot to let you in the car. Thankfully, Ethan didn't do anything stupid. I'm not coming home tonight. Don't call, okay? I just got him to sleep. He's as peaceful as a baby now. And don't use bringing me clothes as an excuse to cause trouble. Wasn't that time embarrassing enough? Victoria was referring to when security caught me listening at the door. I had tried to explain I was bringing her clothes, but she didn't believe me. We had a huge fight, and she called me creepy and disgusting. She gave me the silent treatment for a month. No talking, no smiling, no communication, treating me like air. Before, I feared her Cold War tactics the most, wishing she would hit me, yell at me, even stab me, anything but ignore me. This time, I just glanced at her message and went back to sleep. Suddenly, another text came in. If you haven't seen my message, you better not be lurking outside making a fool of yourself again. Leave now, or I'll really get angry. I didn't bother reading her subsequent messages and turned off my phone. Sincere, wake up. After being nudged several times, I opened my eyes to find Victoria had returned. Did you wait up all night for me? I told you not to. Oh, you didn't stay up all night? Victoria seemed surprised to see me without dark circles under my eyes. Before, even slight sleep deprivation would leave me with panda eyes darker than a black belt. Do you have time? I want to talk about something. Just as I was about to bring up breaking up again, her phone rang. This time it wasn't that troublemaker, but the traffic police. Yesterday, Victoria had broken nearly every traffic law possible. Speeding, driving against traffic, running red lights, crossing solid lines, even hitting a tree. In a city covered with surveillance cameras, there was no escape. Her license was suspended with all 12 points deducted. Victoria pouted, complaining loudly about how inhuman the police were. I was trying to save someone. How could they do this to me? Sincere helped me file a complaint. Though Victoria didn't love me much, she trusted my abilities completely. She was used to dumping all her problems on me to solve. I wasn't just her backup plan. I was her Doraemon and emotional dump. So I said, of course, I know you can handle this. How could you possibly live without a driver's license? Then you wouldn't be able to rush to Ethan's side 24/7. He can't live without you. Victoria was pleased. I continued. Just give me Ethan's depression diagnosis and evidence of his suicide attempt yesterday, like medical reports. I'll help you appeal. Victoria's expression changed. Sincere, you're so evil. Are you trying to make Ethan's pain into a public joke? She stormed off angrily. I was about to call after her to break up, but my phone rang. My parents said they were coming to visit. Looks like the breakup would have to wait a few days. My parents had been pushing me to get married. They'd met Victoria before, and my mom saw right through her. Son, this girl doesn't seem like someone who'll build a life with you. Mom suggested breaking up, saying she had several suitable matches she could introduce me to. Back then, I was obsessed with Victoria and refused. Now, I don't want to love anyone, let alone go on blind dates. So I needed Victoria to act as a shield for a few more days. After 2 years, this was the first time I was using her. They say loving someone is hard, but not loving someone turns out to be quite easy. Victoria was tired from last night. With no work on weekends, she slept all morning. When she emerged drowsily at noon and found I hadn't cooked or washed her clothes, her face darkened immediately. Sincere, just yesterday I was praising how sensible you'd become. Why are you being difficult today? No cooking, no laundry. Is this some kind of protest? I already told you Ethan was trying to kill himself yesterday. Before she could finish, I interrupted. Life comes first. You did the right thing. I'm not angry. I was just busy with work stuff. Seeing my calm attitude, Victoria's anger subsided. She asked, "Really?" "Oh yeah, my parents are coming in a few days. Please spend some time with them. It won't take long." "Okay, as long as it doesn't conflict with anything involving Ethan." I didn't cook lunch. We ordered takeout. That evening, Victoria's company had a team-building event at a countryside resort. I didn't want to go, but since Victoria couldn't drive, I had to be her chauffeur. The resort was south, but I drove north. I didn't want to arrive only to have Victoria send me back to pick up Ethan. It had happened many times before. Gas is expensive. Might as well save where I can. Seeing me so proactive, Victoria smiled sweetly. "Sincere, you've really grown. I was just about to ask you to pick up Ethan. You're so thoughtful now. People with depression need to participate in group activities." At Ethan's apartment, Victoria bounced upstairs to get him. Soon they came down together, laughing and chatting. Looking at him, it was laughable. Is this what depression looks like? Even stray dogs on the street weren't as cheerful as him. They naturally sat in the back seat together. Whenever Ethan was around, Victoria never sat in my passenger seat. The resort was about 12 miles away, but with heavy traffic, it took over an hour. The whole time they giggled and reminisced about their high school days. They were high school classmates, and I couldn't be part of their past. I used to try joining their conversations, but Victoria would just roll her eyes. "You don't know these people, don't interrupt." This time, I knew my place and kept quiet, like a proper chauffeur minus the white gloves. At the dinner venue, Ethan naturally sat pressed against Victoria, marking his territory. They fed each other during the meal, completely unbothered about sharing saliva. Yet at my place, Victoria always claimed to be a germaphobe. She once flew into a rage because I accidentally used her toothbrush. Many people misunderstood Victoria and Ethan's relationship, assuming he was her real boyfriend. Victoria would just purse her lips without explaining, while Ethan would squint at me, full of smugness and provocation. He loved provoking me, making me lose my cool, stirring up fights between Victoria and me. Then he'd play innocent, pretending to mediate but actually causing more trouble. Playing both good cop and bad cop, this trick never failed. In the past, I would sit there with a bitter expression, but this time I raised my teacup and smiled at him. "Enjoy your meal." Ethan's face fell, showing disappointment at his failed plan. Victoria saw this too. She was smiling at first, but gradually her expression turned puzzled. When I used to fight with Ethan for her attention, though she claimed it was annoying, she actually enjoyed feeling pursued. My recent docile behavior confused her. "Hey, handsome, are you alone? Can I sit here?" A curvy young woman approached me. "Sincere, come here," Victoria suddenly called out loudly. I smiled apologetically at the young woman and sat down on Victoria's other side. The three of us sitting together made other people at the table give us strange looks. On the way back, Ethan pretended to be drunk, clinging to Victoria like a leech, rubbing against her. Victoria, unusually, tried to explain to me, "He's drunk." She had never bothered to explain before. "I'll drive slowly so he won't get sick," I said. Not because I care about Ethan, but because I don't want my car getting dirty. After a moment of silence, she suddenly said, "That receptionist Susan is quite loose. Everyone says she's easy." Victoria made this random comment about the curvy woman from earlier. At Ethan's place, she helped the drunk Ethan upstairs. Half an hour later, I got a call from Victoria. "Why did you leave? I thought you'd stay overnight to help take care of Ethan." The line went quiet for a moment before she added, "He's not too drunk tonight. He can take care of himself. Come pick me up." Just then, I heard Ethan's heart-wrenching cry through the phone. "Oh, I'm such a useless waste. I feel so helpless." Victoria sighed. Sincere, I think. I hung up before she could finish. No need to hear those tired old lines again. My parents' train was arriving at 9 a.m. the next morning. The new station in town often confused first-time visitors, making it hard to find the right exit or catch a cab. My parents, being from a small town, would find it especially challenging. I was supposed to pick them up, but my company had an urgent matter I couldn't leave. Coincidentally, Victoria called. Her voice sounded tired. Apparently last night had been exhausting. Ugh, we really can't let Ethan drink anymore. He just kept crying in my arms all night. I stayed up all night taking care of him. I only managed to get him to bed in the early hours and caught a few hours of sleep on the couch. I'm so tired now. She seemed to be complaining, but I caught her underlying message. She was telling me she hadn't slept with Ethan. In the past, such an explanation would have made my day. But now I didn't care anymore. Could I ask you a favor? I said politely. My parents' train arrives at 9. Could you pick them up? I'm worried they'll get lost. I spoke very courteously, prepared for her refusal and ready to make other arrangements. Of course, she agreed readily. I haven't seen your aunt and uncle in a while. Leave it to me, don't worry. And don't say favor. Why so formal? As it turned out, she couldn't be trusted at all. At noon, I got a call from my mom. Son, your father's blood sugar is low. He can't wait much longer. Maybe ask Victoria if she's still coming? My parents were just like that. They'd avoid troubling their children if possible. They'd been waiting at the station since 9 a.m., not seeing Victoria, who was supposed to pick them up. They didn't dare move around, afraid of getting lost. They didn't dare rush Victoria, worried about upsetting her. They waited 3 hours until my dad felt unwell before finally calling me. They'd hesitated to call earlier because I said I had a morning meeting, and they didn't want to disturb me. I dropped my phone and rushed to my car. Victoria called on the way. Sorry, Ethan's been crying all morning. I totally forgot about picking up your parents. I'm heading there now. Victoria, let's break up. She froze, then her voice rose sharply. Sincere, don't be so fickle. You were being so reasonable just days ago. Why are you making a fuss now? I must have had a reason for not going. Ethan wouldn't say a word all morning, no matter how I tried to cheer him up. You know how worried I was. I couldn't just leave him alone at home, right? Your parents could have taken a taxi anyway. They're not senile. You're threatening to break up over this little thing? I'm really disappointed in you. Where should we have lunch? My treat, okay? As an apology. If your parents badmouth me over this, I'll have to wonder about their character. I might need to reconsider whether they have some issues. I was focused on the heavy traffic, so I hadn't hung up, letting her ramble on. Victoria, we're done. I mean it. I actually wanted to tell you in person, but kept getting interrupted. I don't want to wait anymore. Let's end it now. I glanced at the car clock. May 14th, 12:05 p.m., we're cutting all ties. From now on, there's nothing between us. Hang up. I'm driving. Victoria got angry. Sincere, you're a grown man playing the breakup card? Let me tell you, threatening breakup is a woman's privilege. You have no right to play this game. Aren't you afraid I might actually agree? Then you'd have nowhere to cry. Even though I was late, made a small mistake, did you have to be so relentless? Do you think I owe you? I guess I've been too nice to you lately, making you cocky. Just like Ethan said, we can't be too good to you or you'll take advantage. She angrily hung up. Based on my experience, she was about to give me the silent treatment again. I suspected Victoria had trained in Antarctica. She was too good at Cold Wars. If I didn't compromise, she could keep it up from spring through winter, from the Cretaceous to the Cambrian period. Perhaps that's what killed the dinosaurs. She needed to maintain absolute control in our relationship. So she couldn't be wrong, couldn't lose, couldn't damage her pride and dignity. I used to always give in first because I read that cold wars are the most damaging to relationships. I was afraid our love would freeze to death. This time, though, I felt no anxiety, only relief. I picked up my parents from the station and brought them home. They didn't mention Victoria at all, not wanting to embarrass me. For the next 2 days, I showed them around the city. Sure enough, Victoria didn't call once. let alone show up to face my parents. When I was taking them back home, my mom finally couldn't hold back anymore. "Did you have a fight? You're a man. You should be more understanding toward Victoria. She's a young woman. It's natural for her to be a bit willful. Should Mom talk to her? Make peace for you? Don't get upset just because she didn't pick us up at the station. It's not worth it. Your father and I don't mind." Looking at my mom's worried expression, I suddenly felt ashamed. When someone is too submissive and passive in a relationship, they don't just lose their own dignity and self-respect. They make their parents bow their heads too. Like my parents, even though they didn't approve of Victoria, they had to tiptoe around her because of my obsession, always afraid of upsetting her and causing me trouble. I wanted to slap myself. I was such an unfilial son. "Mom, we broke up," I decided to be honest. "Really? You actually broke up?" My mom was surprised. "You believe him? He wouldn't dare," my dad scoffed. "A leopard can't change its spots." "Shut up, old man, no one asked you." My mom elbowed him sharply. While adjusting my clothes, she rambled, "If it works out, stay together. If not, we'll find someone else. My son is so outstanding, we won't have trouble finding a good daughter-in-law." My mom's words brought tears to my eyes. "Okay, Mom, I'll go on those blind dates during New Year's. I thought I loved Victoria so much that I couldn't live without her. But when we actually broke up, I didn't cry. I was calm. However, the night after sending my parents home, I had a good cry and got thoroughly drunk. Not because I missed the past, but because I suddenly realized how much I had been like sand. I always thought that even if Victoria was an iceberg, she would melt under my gentle affection. But Victoria was an iron weight. She couldn't be warmed up. She could only make those who truly cared for her feel cold. I was like Sisyphus from Greek mythology, pushing a boulder up a mountain every day, only to watch it roll back down before reaching the top, all progress lost. So he would repeat this endlessly, his life slowly consumed by this futile and hopeless task. This perfectly described my feelings for Victoria. No matter how much I gave, as soon as Ethan beckoned, she would abandon me, making all my efforts worthless. In my drunken state, I deleted all messages, photos, and videos of Victoria from my phone. The last thing I deleted was her contact number. But because I was drunk, my shaky hands accidentally dialed her number. By now, we'd been in a Cold War for 3 days, and I hadn't called to apologize. A new record. I wondered if Victoria was waiting for me to give in too. It only rang once before she picked up. "Ha ha! I thought you could hold out for a few more days. Realized your mistake? Done playing breakup? If you could last a week, I might have actually been impressed. Now you're just slapping your own face. Aren't you embarrassed?" "I'm embarrassed for you." Victoria's voice was cold but triumphant. I knew she wouldn't believe it was an accidental dial, so I just hung up. I could imagine her fuming on the other end, probably cursing me for being shameless. Actually, she was right. I had been too shameless before. Now I just wanted to regain my dignity bit by bit. The next day, I gave up the apartment. We had rented this 2-bedroom place after officially getting together. It was close to Victoria's workplace, but far from mine. Just for her convenience, I had been commuting 50 miles every day, exhausted but never feeling it was too much. Now that we were broken up, there was no need to torture myself anymore. I rented a studio near my office. The rent was 2/3 less. The money I saved in a year could buy my mom a massage chair. For the next week, my life was fulfilling. I didn't have to wake up at 5 a.m. to buy breakfast. I could wake up at 8 and stroll to work. I didn't have to rush home after work to cook for Victoria. I could play pool and grab drinks with colleagues. "Sincere, we always thought you were quite antisocial, but you're actually pretty good company." Well, I had a girlfriend before, couldn't help it. Now I'm single. When my single colleagues heard this, they were confused, but the married ones looked envious when they heard about my breakup. Seems they weren't having an easy time either. Without being controlled by Victoria's moods, my work performance improved significantly. One of my proposals caught the boss's attention, "We're opening a branch in Charleston. Are you interested in taking charge?" If this had happened before, I would have declined because of Victoria. In fact, I had given up many better opportunities because of her. Now, of course, I was willing, not just because it meant a promotion, but also because Charleston was my hometown. I couldn't ask for better than working back home. By now, it had been 2 weeks since I told Victoria about breaking up. She finally couldn't stand it anymore and called me first. Although I had deleted her contact, I still remembered her number. I was in a meeting with my boss about the branch office, so I didn't answer and hung up. She called again. I hung up again. She seemed determined and called a third time, so I blocked her number. After finishing with my boss, I got a call from an unknown number. "Who is this?" "Sincere, you dare block me. Have you lost your mind?" Victoria's voice was both shocked and furious. My behavior was absolutely unacceptable in her eyes. "Aren't you afraid I'll really break up with you out of anger? Aren't we already broken up?" Victoria was stumped. After a while, she said viciously, "Where are you? Come back right now. My key isn't working. I can't open the door. Just wait till I get my hands on you." She had gone to our old apartment, but I had already moved out, and the landlord had naturally changed the locks. "I've moved out and given up the apartment." "What?" "I packed all your things and sent them to your office reception. Didn't you see them?" "What?" Victoria's voice reached a screech, so I continued. "Anything else? If not, I'm hanging up." "Sincere, you're really serious about this? You really dare break up with me?" "If you want, I can write you a certificate to prove it." "Sincere, listen carefully. If I agree to this breakup, even if you kneel and beg in the future, I won't get back together with you. Don't throw a stone on your own feet. Don't play with fire." I quickly said, "You can record what I'm saying. I promise I will never look for you again. If I go back on my word, I'll never find a seat on the subway for the rest of my life." Anyone who's worked in a big city knows how serious this curse is. "You. Are you sure? I'll count to 5. If you don't apologize, we're really done." "How about counting to 10? Let me think it over." Fine. 10 counts then. 10. "Okay, I've thought it through. We're really done." Emma Snow was Victoria's best friend and used to be on good terms with me too. That evening she called. "Victoria's crying. Come comfort her quickly. I'm warning you not to take this too far. I don't believe you really want to break up." My loyal dog image was so deeply ingrained that whether it was my dad or Emma, they'd sooner believe pigs could fly than accept I would actively break up with Victoria. I said, "You know why we're breaking up, right?" Emma certainly knew, as she was high school classmates with Victoria and Ethan. "Sigh, I understand. You're just jealous of Ethan, right? I get how you feel. You think Victoria doesn't consider your feelings and Ethan has no boundaries. But listen, their history. I can tell Victoria still loves you. Otherwise, wouldn't she have gotten back with Ethan already? She's just sentimental about the past. You know, that relationship with Ethan was her biggest regret from her youth. She wasn't wrong. I learned about Victoria and Ethan's story later. They were high school classmates who promised to attend the same college. Victoria deliberately missed several questions on her exam, but still ended up at different universities by chance. They went to different cities and tried long-distance dating. Long-distance relationships are the ultimate test. Soon after, Ethan cheated with a plain-looking rich heiress. Because the heiress's family had money and influence, Victoria was heartbroken and caused a scene at Ethan's university. She was brutally humiliated by him. "I purposely scored 50 points lower for you. How could you do this to me?" "Victoria, that was your own stupidity. I didn't force you." Victoria left in tears. For several years after that, she and Ethan were strangers, never speaking. I met her during a company collaboration. We fell in love and were talking about marriage. Then Ethan showed up again, looking pathetic. Turns out the rich heiress was just playing around. Her family had arranged a business marriage for her. Ethan was dumped, failing to become a rich family's son-in-law. Like a used tissue, he was discarded and came crawling back to Victoria, begging for another chance. Any normal person would have slapped such a jerk and cursed him out. But things were messed up. Victoria didn't hate Ethan at all. Instead, she blamed the rich heiress for playing with his feelings. She catered to Ethan's every whim, especially after he started faking depression, waiting on him hand and foot. I used to find this bewildering. Returning good for evil, treating a scumbag like treasure. Should I praise Victoria for being forgiving or criticize her for being foolish? I even ventured into mystical explanations, wondering if Ethan had put some kind of spell on Victoria. Of course, now I understand, there was no spell. Victoria simply never got over Ethan. She was so desperate to make up for her youth's regret, using my dignity as compensation. Although Emma made the call, I could clearly hear another faint breathing on the line. Obviously, Victoria was listening. Victoria, I know you're there. I once wanted so badly to be part of your youth, but found I didn't fit in. The old saying is right, forced love isn't sweet. I respect your desire to make up for past regrets. Whatever you do with Ethan from now on has nothing to do with me. Try to understand my feelings too. These 2 years with you have given me too many regrets and hurts. Only breaking up can fix this. Let's part ways and find our own happiness. Victoria angrily spoke up. Enough, Sincere. You get a little sunshine and think you're a flower. You really think I can't live without you? Listen carefully. I'm not begging you not to break up, I'm giving you a chance. So you won't bother me later with suicide threats. I never realized you were such a pretender before. Be careful. Pride comes before a fall. Victoria hung up furiously. In the past, making her this angry would have me walking on eggshells, ready to die to apologize. But now I felt no anxiety or unease. Turns out not just love makes you brave. Falling out of love does too. I thought with Victoria's pride, after I expressed my determination to break up so clearly, she wouldn't contact me again. But that night she called again from another number since I had blocked her old one. Sincere, what's my account password? During our relationship, I was in charge of keeping all her passwords because she found it too troublesome to remember them. I calmly told her the password. Though we were broken up, I didn't plan to treat her as an enemy. Okay, got it. Victoria hung up, seemingly calm. But less than 10 minutes later, she called again. Sincere, I forgot my cloud storage password too. If you can't remember the passwords, you can log in with your phone verification code, I said. Or you could set a new password using meaningful numbers like Ethan's birthday height ID number, or your first date anniversary. That way others won't guess it, and you won't forget. I swear I was sincerely giving Victoria advice, without any emotional undertones or sarcasm. After all, I couldn't keep managing her passwords forever. But Victoria grumbled unhappily. Sincere, how long are you going to keep up this Cold War? Are you addicted to it? Stop being passive-aggressive and jealous. I was wrong, okay? You don't know how terrible these days have been for me. I've been anxious and depressed, checking my phone dozens of times, wondering when you'd contact me. Do you understand this torturous feeling? I'd rather you yell at me than be so distant. Fine, I give up. I surrender. I apologize. I shouldn't have neglected you for Ethan. Don't be angry anymore, okay? You're a grown man, don't be petty with me. I'm already lowering my head, satisfied? I suddenly wanted to laugh. Victoria was asking if I knew how Cold Wars felt, like an executioner asking a death row inmate if beheading hurts. I had begged Victoria countless times not to use the silent treatment, saying we should solve problems through communication, that emotional abuse was too damaging to relationships. But back then, Victoria would just cross her arms, tilt her head back, and snort dismissively, "If you can't take it, don't play." Coming back to reality, I said, "Victoria, we're really over. How many times do I have to say it before you'll believe me? You like being a broken record, but I don't want to be a repeat player." Victoria's voice finally showed panic. "Sincere, I'll call your parents and apologize for being late to pick them up, okay? I know you love me. You can't let me go. Your parents forced you to break up with me, didn't they? It's the 21 Stones century. How can parents still interfere with their children's relationships? That's too controlling. She actually blamed my parents for the breakup. I got angry. Victoria, my parents never said a bad word about you. How dare you slander them? I just don't want to break up with you. Why are you being so fierce? Victoria's voice grew smaller, showing guilt. I spoke earnestly. Our problems have been there for a long time. That incident was just the last straw. She said, I know. You're mainly upset about how much attention I give Ethan. I neglected you. I admit I went too far many times. But trust me, please. I really only see him as a friend now. I've never cheated on you physically or emotionally. Even though he pretended to sleepwalk and tried to unbutton my clothes a few times, I always refused. If Victoria hadn't mentioned it, I wouldn't have known Ethan was talented enough to fake sleepwalking on top of faking depression. Victoria, since you know his sleepwalking is fake, why can't you see his depression is fake too? I think you do see it, you're just pretending not to. I really don't understand. If you had broken up because of external pressure or interference, I could accept you rekindling your romance. I'd step aside gracefully. But that's not what happened. You broke up because he betrayed you. Why do you still throw yourself at him? Are you really that cheap? Victoria was silent for a moment. Sincere, you know what? First love is unforgettable for every girl. I fell in love with Ethan when I was just discovering romance. For him, I dropped from a prestigious university to a community college. Do you know how much pressure I faced? My parents called me a love-struck fool, said I had no future, that I was embarrassing them. They were so disappointed they almost cut ties with me. But I didn't think I was wrong then. I thought I was being noble, sacrificing for love, like a movie heroine, so touching. Life is precious, love is priceless. I thought as long as Ethan and I loved each other well, we'd become a legendary campus romance. Victoria started crying. But what happened? Ethan dumped me. He trampled on my feelings for some dirty money. Do you know how humiliated and devastated I was? Other girls who get betrayed receive sympathy, but when Ethan dumped me, everyone mocked and ridiculed me. They said I deserved it, that I brought it on myself. They said if I didn't care about my own future, I couldn't blame others for not caring about my life. I did become a campus legend, as a cautionary tale. Victoria sobbed as she continued. That's why I couldn't go home for years. Couldn't face my old classmates. My parents kept using it to lecture me, saying, this is what happens when you don't listen to your elders. Thankfully, Ethan came back to find me. I knew he was faking illness for sympathy, but I still accepted him. Because the more he acted to win me back, the more it showed he regretted his actions. I'm not nice to him because I still love him. I just want to show everyone who laughed at me what a generous and forgiving person Victoria is. I returned evil with kindness. Ethan betrayed me and regretted it. I'm not the joke, he is. The one who lost face isn't me, but him. Do you understand? She broke down, crying. This was the first time Victoria had opened her heart to me. I said, I understand. You didn't want to be laughed at for being a woman's loyal dog, so you tortured me, a man's loyal dog instead. No, I didn't mean to torture you. I was just testing you. Sincere, even though I act casual, it's because I was hurt before. I'm actually very insecure and fragile inside. And you were so good to me, it made me more afraid of losing you. So I had to act superior and cold in front of you. Because I read that women shouldn't be too forward, only by keeping men under control can we avoid getting hurt. I really know I was wrong. Can't I change? I promise I won't cross boundaries with Ethan anymore. Sincere, you're the best man in the world to me. I love you. I can't lose you. I sighed softly. The one you can't have is always the one who stirs your heart. The one who's favored always takes it for granted. So I said, because Ethan hurt you after you gave him so much, you decided to emotionally manipulate me to maintain control in our relationship? Don't you think that's unfair to me? Victoria's voice grew urgent. But you love me. If you love me, shouldn't you accept everything about me? Yes, I used to love you that much. But my love has been completely exhausted by you. Thank you for sharing your true feelings. It answers many of my questions, but it won't change my decision to break up. Goodbye. Hope we never meet again." I hung up and looked at the sky, letting out a long breath. Ethan made Victoria grow up. Victoria made me wake up. We all evolved from love-struck fools into more self-aware people. Victoria became completely different from before. I don't know how she found my new address, but every time I opened my door, I'd find she had bought breakfast and was waiting for me. "Eat it while it's hot. Go to work, I'll clean up your place." "Victoria, don't do this. We're broken up. This isn't appropriate." "What's not appropriate? You cleaned up after me for so many years." She was passionate. I fled in panic, even forgetting to lock the door. When I returned home that evening, I was nervous, really worried Victoria would keep pursuing me. Thankfully, she wasn't at the door. I sighed in relief and went inside. The apartment had been cleaned thoroughly, so she actually knew how to do housework. She just hadn't bothered before. I sighed, took off my clothes, and went to shower. Suddenly, Victoria burst into the bathroom wearing a pink nightgown, her eyes seductive. "Sincere, let's have a baby," she said, licking her lips. She hadn't left at all. Victoria was very beautiful. I used to be so addicted to her body, her scent, but now I just felt disgusted. "Using seduction? Victoria, what do you think you are? A courtesan? And what do you think I am? An animal who only thinks with his lower body. Your body isn't a bargaining chip to win back love. You're not just insulting yourself, you're insulting me too. Leave. I'm so disappointed in you." Seeing my genuine anger, Victoria turned pale with fear. She threw herself at me, holding me tight. "Sincere, don't be so cruel, please. I'll really break down. I just want to be with you. What's wrong with that? I love you. I've never betrayed you. Give me one more chance, please. I'm begging you." She frantically kissed my face while speaking, her tears mixing with saliva, leaving my face a mess. "Enough." I pushed her hard. The floor was wet and slippery. She fell. "I hoped we could end this gracefully. The more you debase yourself, the more I feel we're from different worlds." I left to stay at a hotel. Behind me came Victoria's desperate sobs, but I didn't look back. Tears only work on people who care about you. Now I just found her noisy. To avoid Victoria's harassment, I stopped going home, sleeping on the floor at the office instead. Victoria wouldn't give up. She came to my office daily. Emma told me she had quit her job to pursue me. When she couldn't get in, she would wait below, like a statue gazing at the sea. A colleague advised me to be more generous. I just smiled without explaining. I had to stay far away from her. After all, it was raining. Thunder and lightning crashed as Victoria swayed in the storm, looking like she might collapse any moment. But she stubbornly refused to leave. I sighed, took an umbrella, and walked to face her. Victoria was soaked through, pale as a drowned rat, but her expression was excited. "Sincere, I knew you couldn't bear to see me suffer." Before she could continue, I said, "I'm transferring to our branch office in my hometown. Today is my last day working here, so you don't need to come anymore. Consider this umbrella a farewell gift." I pushed the umbrella into Victoria's hands and turned to walk back. I got soaked too, but my heart was clear as a cloudless sky. I had truly let go. That night, Emma called again. "She has a fever. It's all because of you." Victoria's voice came through, sounding extremely weak. "Sincere, I need you. My fever is 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Will you come stay with me?" 113 degrees Fahrenheit. No living person runs a fever that high. Victoria was suddenly speechless. She certainly remembered this line, just with the roles reversed. I believed she loved me now, because she was finally acting foolish for me. But this couldn't change my decision to break up. "Sincere, that's enough. Victoria really is sick. Maybe not 113 degrees Fahrenheit, but at least 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Are you really going to be this cruel? Even execution allows a final meeting. Come see her. Take her to the hospital." But I have a 9 p.m. train home tonight. Can't you change your ticket for Victoria? No, my parents are waiting for me. Emma exploded. Sincere, you claimed to love Victoria so much. It was all lies. You're just like Ethan. You're no good. I doubt you ever loved Victoria. Pretending to be devoted. You're just an ungrateful wolf. Victoria sobbed while defending me. Emma, don't say that about him. He's not like Ethan. It's my fault for hurting him. You're still speaking up for him at a time like this? No wonder you'll always be taken advantage of by men. Emma was still furious. I hung up without explaining. Ice was once water. Unlove was once love. Looking at my watch, it was 7:30 p.m. I took my suitcase and caught a cab to the station. At the platform, I saw Emma supporting Victoria as they appeared. She really was sick, not just pale, but with white lips and eyes swollen like goldfish. As soon as she saw me, she hugged my legs. Sincere, I'm begging you, don't abandon me. I can't live without you. I shook my head unmoved. Victoria, stop torturing yourself. We can't turn back time. Emma was furious. Victoria, get up. Don't beg him. He's just another worthless man. Three-legged toads are hard to find, but two-legged men are everywhere. Let's go. I'll introduce you to better ones. Don't sell your dignity. You're embarrassing all women. Emma tried to pull Victoria away, but she refused to move. No, I don't want anyone else. I only want Sincere. What use is dignity without him? So what if it's embarrassing? It's not my first time being humiliated. She coughed several times. Between her cold and crying, Victoria's voice was already hoarse. Suddenly a voice rang out. Victoria, are you crazy? How could you delete me? How could you lower yourself like this for him? Your submission should only be for me. I'm your only king. Ethan appeared. He tried angrily to pull Victoria up too. Victoria cursed. Get away from me. I don't want to see you. You ruined all my happiness. What king? You're a bastard. This was the first time I'd seen Victoria treat Ethan so harshly. I was surprised. Ethan himself was even more surprised. He suddenly slapped Victoria hard. Bitch, you must be delirious from the fever. He then glared at me viciously. It's all your fault. Did you put a spell on Victoria? Why else would she reject me? She's the dog I trained. Even beating wouldn't drive her away. Growing angrier as he spoke, Ethan charged at me with a punch. I was about to dodge, but Victoria, who had seemed weak before, suddenly erupted. I won't let you hurt Sincere. She stood up and shoved Ethan hard, pushing him off the platform. Just then, a high-speed train rushed into the station. Ethan didn't even have time to scream before becoming a bloody mess. He always pretended to be lonely and miserable, constantly threatening suicide. This time his dream finally came true. Victoria was sentenced to 7 years for manslaughter. After the sentencing, I wanted to visit her in prison. She refused visits, sending me just one line in a letter. Sincere, I only hope you'll remember me at my most beautiful.